I've said we need to discuss the games we want to see come to Switch openly. I'm going to do so, and I encourage you to do so as well, whether you make a similar video or just discuss games on social media with proper tagging. This time I'm going to talk about Capcom. One of the most obvious things and a good place to start is Ace Attorney. That is a huge handheld franchise that the Switch needs, whether it comes first as Ace Attorney 7 or a spin-off. I'd also like to see an Okami collection with an HD remake of the first two games, and if the collection does well, make Okami 3 at least a Switch limited time exclusive. It would be an even bigger bonus if Capcom added HD Rumble to the collection. The upcoming Marvel vs. Capcom is another game that Capcom needs to get on Switch, as soon as they possibly can. Then they need to follow it up with the constant fan suggestion of Nintendo vs. Capcom. I really don't know how that hasn't happened yet. Also, an upgraded port of Street Fighter Cross Tekken basically polish the graphics, include all the DLC, and maybe add a few Switch exclusive characters like Little Mac, Takamaru, or an ARMS character. Maybe they could release it to get some excitement back when Tekken Cross Street Fighter is finally nearing release. But that's getting close to a Namco discussion. Finally, I'd like to see Capcom make like Ubisoft and break their soft exclusivity deal with Sony and port over Street Fighter V. It didn't sell on PlayStation 4, so Capcom should start backing away from that exclusivity after a year, and bring it to Switch and maybe Xbox. If they need to make it Super Street Fighter V or something, they should do that. I also would support a Beautiful Joe with the possibility for a new game. I never personally got into the IP, but I know it has a very passionate and loyal following. I think it could do well and possibly expand. Finally, Monster Hunter should come. I have no interest in Monster Hunter because it seems like it focuses heavily on the aspect of MMOs that utterly repulses me. But I know many, especially the Japanese, are really into the series, and would be good for the Switch. That may be all of the retail games I want to see, but for Virtual Console and eShop, they need to make sure Nintendo is steadily dumping a lot of their games onto the eShop. Every Mega Man game on compatible hardware, the Breath of Fire franchise, the Street Fighter games, the Darkstalker games. If we don't get a Dreamcast Virtual Console, some of these would have to be eShop games as part of something like a Capcom Classics eShop line. Getting flustered. And that might actually be for the best if Nintendo's going to have a Virtual Console again. And if they wanted to get, say, Mega Man X7 or X8, God help us. Or how about Onimusha, Mega Man Legends 2 or Breath of Fire 3, which they should, they would have to re-release an eShop game. But it would be a smart move for third parties to move away from the Virtual Console and just release eShop games. I think Nintendo owns Baten Kaitos, but if Namco still owns any bit, they should just say, hey, Nintendo, let's re-release these as an HD collection. I mean, look at this art! I don't know if Nintendo got Xenosaga as well, it may have stayed with Namco, in which case re-releasing these underrated games with HD textures really needs to happen. How about some sequels to Pac-Man games? Maybe a new Pac-Man World Rally if Namco keeps the team responsible for the mobile sequel far, far away. Maybe Pac-Man vs. 2 since it could kind of be done a lot better now. Or maybe a new Pac-Man platformer. Despite being kind of dead, I think a racing game like Ridge Racer would do very well with the two Joy-Cons allowing two-player races at all times. I'd also like to see Soul Calibur return because of the Switch having two Joy-Cons. They could even have Link return in another cameo, only this time Breath of the Wild styled and wielding many weapons. Also, why not bring Tekken 7 over in June as well? They brought the last Tekken to Wii U, and of course, when Tekken Cross Street Fighter does finally come, it should come to Switch. Also, how about Namco make or port a Katamari game to Switch? I mean, the Joy-Cons could really simulate the motions of rolling a growing ball, and the HD Rumble could make it feel like you were actually touching the things in the ball. Why has Nintendo never got a Katamari game? Nintendo handhelds and RPGs go together like magic. So bring Tales of Berseria to Switch, and possibly a compilation of many of the other games, or just put them all on the eShop. And of course, there's a huge audience for their anime tie-in games like Gundam, Digimon, Dragon Balls, Naruto, and One Piece, and they should be there for those who like anime tie-ins. Older Tekken, Tails, Soul Calibur, and the Pac-Man World games should all make it to the eShop. One other thing about the eShop is there's a lot less financial risk, meaning Namco could test the waters with an old Katamari to see if the audience is there. Again though, Namco should push as much of their library as possible to the eShop. Let's start with Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. It's another game that didn't sell well on the other platforms, but I really liked the first game, and I would buy it if it got ported to Switch. Much more straightforwardly, let's get Final Fantasy XV ported over. I know it received mixed reviews and was divisive, but I think it might be viewed more favorably if it could be played handheld. Some of the problems seemed like things that consistently drag down console games but aren't as bad on handhelds. And moving it to a handheld might require Square to fix some poor design decisions, like how much you have to do to properly save and level up. Bravely Third, or an HD collection of the first two games, would make a great budget-priced title. I'd really hate to see an IP as fresh as Bravely Default slip into obscurity because of the Switch taking over the 3DS audience, and not being strictly a handheld. I'm sure the series could look great in HD resolution, with maybe some cel shading. With Square being a titan of RPGs, I also think they would be missing an opportunity if they didn't release a collection of the early Star Ocean games, or the one that released a little under a year ago, especially since I never even heard one released a year ago. I've wanted to properly try the franchise since a friend rented it years ago, and it has a weird system of having to choose characters to recruit at the expense of others. There's another thing I'd buy. I'd also support a Valkyrie profile collection, and while I have no interest in any aspect of the franchise, Kingdom Hearts is very popular and would only do well. And seeing how excited the Final Fantasy VII on Switch rumor has been, it needs to become a reality. Square could also try to put the Star Ocean and Valkyrie Profiles series on the eShop alongside the Final Fantasy games and Dragon Quest, and as usual, dump a lot of their library and see what sells. The next major third party is Sega. Sega is giving us plenty of Sonic, so let's start looking at Jet Radio, which probably won't get a game, but I think would be a great fit that could actually sell if Nintendo formed a close partnership resulting in a Jet Radio Splatoon crossover event, with clothing and locations appearing in the opposite game. You have to admit, as much as Nintendo is pushing Splatoon, the Switch would be the best place for Jet Radio to return. The Switch is also a perfect opportunity to revive Monkey Ball, with the improved gyroscopic controls and how tilting the whole screen as a handheld would be incredibly intuitive. The next new Shin Megami Tensei should also come to Switch, which it may already be confirmed to be coming, as well as Persona 5 and the inevitable Persona 6. Etrian Odyssey is also likely, given that it seems to be selling. Really, if the Switch gets as much Atlas support as the 3DS, it will do well, especially if most of their older games end up on the eShop. Regarding the eShop, Sega should also try to get Dreamcast Virtual Console if possible, or release those games directly on the eShop, barring the existence of a superior GameCube remake. While it is unlikely, I'd like to see a digital-only sequel to Skies of Arcadia. Franchises in particular I think would be great on the eShop include Panzer Dragoon, Valkyria Chronicles, and the Virtua line. Now let's talk about some other third parties. Yes, of course, get all of them to put older games on eShop, but Super Bomberman R looks nice and all, but I hope Nintendo can get Konami to make a new N64 style adventure game, or even a real Castlevania. Level 5 should get some Professor Layton game on Switch as soon as possible, as well as Yokai Watch, at least in Japan. Bethesda should also be trying to get Fallout games on Switch, because I stand by that IP being the one that does better on Nintendo, and on a handheld. I could be wrong, but I think it's a much better fit, and don't want to see Bethesda dump something that isn't the best to lead with, and conclude from that one game, there's no audience at all for them. Activision should port or remake the Spyro and Crash games for the eShop in particular, and test retail with the Call of Duty. Activision is a scummy enough company that doesn't care about quality. I think they could have trouble selling to the traditional Nintendo crowd. But if the Switch brings in a lot of new and lapsed fans, and I think it will, they may have a shot, and it is in their best interest to see. I don't think they could go wrong putting Crash or Spyro on the eShop though. I think that is extremely safe money to make. Ubisoft. I personally really don't want many of their games, but for the same reason I think there may be a market, and that for some reason people still buy Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs. Yeah, try putting them on and see if the newcomers are the ones who still buy your unstable messes. I'm not. I played one Assassin's Creed and it was enough. No more. Didn't like it. 1 out of 10. Actually, it was more like a 0.5 out of 10. For Nintendo, there's a lot, but the big ones have to be Metroid 5. Not Metroid Prime. A real Metroid game. It's about time to let the spin-off sit for a few years and commit fully to the core Metroid experience that hasn't been seen for over 10 years. And since we may be looking at a single platform, and we have easy 2-player, bring back Custom Robo. I like that game. And Golden Sun. Finish the series. One more game to close the series. That's all Golden Sun fans want at this point. But I wouldn't object if they remade the first 2 games with models and maybe some cell shading. We may also be getting Xenoblade 2, but I also want to see Xenoblade X2 eventually come in a couple years. I just finished basically everything I cared to in it, and I still stand by it being the best game that I've ever played. It's got issues and flaws, but every game does. I do think we'll see this though. And finally, give us another Mario Party, or better yet, a Nintendo Party, that can scale the game up to 6 and 8 players. Classic Mario Party gameplay, easy 2-player, and the option for a huge party. If it is a Nintendo Party, it'd also be a great free game to use amiibos. Click the card. I talked about that before. Was it really, like, over a year ago? Man! What games are you hoping to see from any developer? And here's some things to click, because YouTube has things to click now. Who knows what they'll have in a year?